this is Kim and Neil with Geauga Firearms Academy. Thanks for watching. Today we're going to talk about religious organization security teams, also known as church security. We put church security because that's a hit word that a lot of people will type in.
The algorithm.
Yeah, for that algorithm. So let's talk about, maybe you're looking at creating one for your organization, or maybe you have one in place and you just want to see if there's more you can add to it or how you can make it better. Some tips and tricks that we have.
It's unfortunate, but unfortunately, this is the largest growing area that we have. There's this religious worship area, which is sad that we even need such a thing, especially in this day and age in America, but it is what it is. So let's look at some major points that we want to take a look at if you're building that team or you have one already.
Number one is everyone always thinks it's about the people. They think that, oh, so-and-so was in the military, so-and-so is a police officer, and they're like, this makes a great team. We have the best security team out there. But what's really important, Neil?
Yeah, the standard operating procedures. And I'll just say this as a police officer. A lot of you guys are like, well, Bob's a police officer. Bob probably sucks on the range. Most cops are not good shooters. 90% of them are not shooters prior to being law enforcement, in law enforcement, when they leave. It's just the nature of the beast. There's a lot of other things that they excel at. And I'm not saying just because you're a cop, you're not a good shooter, but you probably are. So what we really want to look at are standard operating procedures. Now, why am I saying that? Why is that important? You have to understand that you are not in a police force. Like, just because I don't care how big the team is, or whether it's a paid team, which you might want to shy away from, a volunteer team, regardless, whatever you're the head of that security team, it doesn't give you any special powers. I want that to be very, very clear. If you end up using force, especially deadly force, you're going to be on your own. You're going to be on trial. They're going to sue you specifically. They can also sue the organization, but you're definitely going to have to account for that. And so having those procedures that everybody signs off, everybody knows what the procedures are on these events, everyone has a standard, especially when it comes to performance like shooting. All those things are signed off on so that you have some legal defense that you're going to need on your behalf. Hopefully your organization helps you financially, but understand you have no special privileges in this deal.
Also having plans, and not only having plans, sometimes we go to organizations, they have great plans, but nobody knows them. So what good is that if no one knows what to do? If there's an active shooter or a fire or whatever the big event is, they don't know what to do. Doesn't matter how well it's written, everyone needs to know how to do that. On top of that is communication. Yeah,
and again, this is a tough one because it depends on the religious faith, if you will. We've had a pretty large range of different religions, and some of them are very much against communication, and so it's kind of hit or miss. But you know, I always use this as an example, and it's surprising. I don't always get a yes on this one. I say, okay, so if you're working the front door and a guy comes in with a shotgun, clearly, and you're the front door person, can they use a radio to say, hey, there's a guy that just came in with a shotgun? And there are some religions that are so strict that they actually say no, which again, just like this video or anything else, we're here to give you best practices. I mean, you're going to pick and choose what you want. I can only make the suggestion, and they're gonna roll with it. So, but then nonetheless, going back to communication, it's critically important because that's how we are. Especially if you have a building that is larger than one room, we have to be able to tell people in all areas what's going on so that we can start going back to those plans that we've already put in place.
And if you have a good communication plan in place, you hopefully can give everyone a little bit more time, which is what is always best. We can't stop everything bad from happening, but you know, if you have communications in place, letting everyone know something doesn't seem right, they can start putting in measures and start doing things proactively versus waiting until it's, you know, you're in it. Another question we get asked is, should the team be well known? Should everyone know who they are? Should they even carry openly, or should it be a secret? Should no one know who they are? And what are the pros and cons of each, Neil?
Let's look at a well-known team. So it says security on your shirt, you have an open carry or whatever, you have your tourniquet or whatever you have. It's no question that you're part of the security team. One of the advantages, and again, this is dependent on your area, your organization, but you can enforce a stricter no firearm policy in there. I know a lot of the internet's going to interrupt on this one, but the purpose of this is saying And you guys got to be realistic here. It's not just about our rights. If you say this is the team that will protect this organization and no one else has guns, it's a lot easier for those guys to be able to determine who's the threat, who's the bad guy, and who's just the guy who just pulled out a gun, who's a good guy, but they don't know. There's shooting going on. It's chaotic. I know everyone just assumes it's going to be perfect and everyone understands everything, and this is definitely the bad guy. How many bad guys are there? And so then we start adding more people with unknown training and skill sets in a mix with firearms. It can get nasty. So having a dedicated team that everybody knows and it's their job and that they feel more comfortable not bringing their firearms in, and you make it a known policy that we don't want firearms in the building for that reason, is one way to go. The other way to go is that nobody knows that they're a security team at all. And again, it'll depend on which flavor you want to go to. Obviously, in that case, the disadvantage to that, having a plain clothes, like I'm just a regular person in the organization, is that, like I just said, other people will be carrying as well, most likely, and they're going to pull guns potentially. And now we have, how do we determine who is the bad guy? Is this guy shooting at the bad guy? Is he the bad guy? So there's a lot to play when you really look at it that way. So it really comes down to what your organization wants to do. But again, being completely covered up, it actually is more welcoming. It could be a pro that a lot of people maybe not see a security team like, ooh, I don't know if I feel comfortable with this. I don't feel comfortable leaving my gun in the car. Whatever the case is. But the disadvantage is when things go down, it's going to be a lot harder to decipher who's good and who's bad. Where if we have, and again, I'm not pushing either side. I'm just saying these are the advantages and disadvantages. Where if you have the open carry system and the well-known people, again, they may not be as comfortable in that situation. So it depends on which way your organization wants to go.
Next is standards. We talked about that earlier, but making sure that you have shooting standards is not just something that they do once when they join the team, but something that you guys are continually doing and you're tracking to show that you guys are practicing. It's not like they qualified once and then you never shot again, ever.
That's a great word, by the way, qualified, because that's what we use in law enforcement. We qualify at least once a year in the state of Ohio. We have an actual specific target. We have a specific course of fire. We actually have trainers specifically, like myself, that take courses to become an instructor, et cetera, et cetera. Really not a big deal, but what is important is that's a standard that all the police officers that will come to this situation will have to pass. So it's a pretty easy deal to say that's what we're going to take in. And in the state of Ohio, it's a 25-round course of fire, and it has to be performed at least once a year. So if you have an organization and you do that, you can at least, when you get hauled into court, you can say, hey, we are at the same standard that the police officers are being held to. So that's a very good thing. You can also call your local police department if you want and find out what kind of ammo. A lot of times they'll be more than happy to answer. It's not like a big secret. And you can carry the exact kind if you want to kind of make that as a close a standard as you can. Either way, you have to understand that standard, by the way, is a minimum performance standard. A minimum performance standard. That's like not what we should just do once a year. We should have supplemental training from whomever you get your training from, but more than once to keep those standards high. And
also, when they do it, we always make them do it with the actual handgun that they're going to be carrying, so they're not going to pocket carry this little tiny gun and then bring some full-size gun to do the qualifications with.
And since you brought that up, on our sheets, we have a score sheet in Ohio, and we actually record. I'm sure all the states probably do this too. And we record the make, model, gun, and serial number. And so that number on that gun, that is their gun that they're going to use for that training, so that they can go in a court of law and say, look, I did on this date, I got a score of this, which is passing by the standard, and this is the exact firearm that I used. So, little pro tip there. One of the biggest areas of liability at a religious organization would be
the children, especially if they're going to be separated from the parents at any time, and they're in Sunday school or whatever they have, or they're separated from them.
And when I say that that's a big liability, it's not just if there's an active shooter or a tornado. I mean, obviously, if there is a fire drill or tornado or whatever you got to do, I mean, you're now saying that we're gonna take custody of these kids at this time from this hour to this hour, and it's basically our responsibility to take care of them. So if something happens, that's going to fall on that organization. The other thing is custody. It's a big deal. Like, you don't know that, Sally and Bob here just split up and you don't know about it, and Sally has full custody and Bob doesn't, and then there's a big deal there. So without standard procedures, where I'm going with this, that can be real messy.
Our last point we wanted to bring up was knowing your rights and the laws in your area.
And before we do that, big interruption here for the Corps Executive Protection Belt. This is a 2-belt system. We just did a review on it. Check it out. There'll be a link down below.
That's a great option, especially if you're on a security team or you're looking at creating one. A great way to, wear your attire.
It does not scream tactical belt.
Tactical,
Very nice.
tactical belt. But things are going to vary a lot between where you're at. We're in Ohio. You might be in Texas, Florida, New York, wherever. The rules are very different there. And like Neil mentioned, there's no special. You're in a church security team, so you can do things differently than everyone else.
What if you have a special badge you made up?
That's probably not good.
I mean, if you're in LA or New York, I'm sure it's going to be a lot different when you're talking about use of force and deadly force encounters than here in Ohio or Texas. So going back around, circling that wagon, you got to understand what you can and can't do legally. Obviously, in a life or death scenario, a lot of things are going to change, but you're still going to have to answer to that at some point in a court of law, both criminally and civilly. And
also to keep your organization safe as well.
Yeah,
they need to understand what you can and cannot do. We hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and maybe it just got you thinking about it, different ideas and ways you can help improve your team, or if you're going to create one, how to make it best as you can.
Yep.
We always appreciate hearing from you guys.
Most of you.
Most of you. You can find us here on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Rumble, and we put all of our premium content on Patreon. Until next time, remember, it's always better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6.